the Creole-Amharic language, weapon of settlers, neo-hybrid assimilated ethno-Siderians. Photos, ardent Oromophobic assimilated delusional neo-Neftegna ethno-Siderians, 𝗟𝗏𝗄, left, 𝗏𝗵𝗃, right. In its core, language is a systematic means of communication. But language is far more than that. It is the invisible architecture of human creation and existence. The very essence, the bedrock of what makes us human, and upon which human civilization has been built, and the intricate mirror in which our individual and collective identities are reflected. Language enables us to transcend individual limitations and collective achievements. Simultaneously, it is the intimate mirror that reflects our deepest thoughts, shapes our personal narratives, and binds us together in shared cultural identities. To understand language is to understand the core of human, the fundamental system through which we communicate, create, think, and dream. It is experience, our past, our present, and our infinite potential. It is through language culture has been transmitted, learned, and passed down from generation to generation within a community. A powerful wisdom that distinguishing human communication from all others. It is the vehicle for abstract thought, enabling us to conceptualize, categorize, and theorize far beyond immediate sensory inputs. Language, the architect of civilization. Without language, human civilization as we know it would be impossible. It is the primary engine that drives collective action, knowledge accumulation, and societal structure. It is with language that the genius of the Oromo people invented, developed the Gada system, the 𝗔𝗺𝗵𝗿 people, the Lewis system, and lived with it with harmony for time immemorial, just to note some among many. It is with language that one of the wonders of the world, the cradle of human civilization, hundreds of pyramids, along the Great Abya or Mormor Nile in foreign bank was built. Thus language is not merely a tool for communication. It is the very blueprint upon which human civilization is meticulously designed and constructed. Like a master architect, language provides the foundational structure, allowing for the articulation of complex thoughts, the negotiation of shared realities, and the codification of laws and societal norms. It enables the seamless transmission of knowledge, history, and cultural values across generations, fostering a collective memory essential for progress and identity. From the earliest oral traditions that bound communities together to the sophisticated scientific theories and philosophical inquiries of today, language facilitates the collaboration, innovation, and abstract reasoning that distinguish human society. Without its intricate grammar and vast vocabulary, the complex edifice of human culture, governance, and technological advancement would simply crumble, proving language to be the indispensable architect of all we call civilization. Knowledge transfer and accumulation. Language allows us to pass down knowledge, experiences, and wisdom from one generation to the next. Oral traditions preserved histories, myths, and practical skills for millennia. The invention of writing systems elevated this further, creating a permanent record of human thought, discoveries, and laws, leading to the rapid acceleration of scientific, philosophical, and technological progress. Complex social organization. Building cities, establishing governments, creating legal systems, and coordinating large-scale projects that all require sophisticated communication. Language enables us to define roles, enforce rules, negotiate agreements, and resolve conflicts, forming the intricate web of social relations that underpins any functioning society. Collective memory and shared history. Language allows societies to construct a shared narrative of their past, establishing a collective identity and purpose. This shared history, whether through epic poems, historical texts, or oral traditions, binds communities together and provides a framework for understanding their place in the world. Innovation and creativity. The ability to articulate complex ideas, hypothesize, debate, and document findings through language is crucial for innovation. Scientific theories, artistic expressions, and philosophical doctrines are born, refined, and disseminated through linguistic interaction. Cultural preservation. Language is far more than a mere tool for communication. It is the living repository where a culture's unique worldview, deeply held values, and cherished traditions are meticulously preserved and transmitted across generations. Every idiom, every nuance, and every grammatical structure subtly reflects the collective understanding a community has of its reality, its moral compass, and its societal norms. Crucially, it is within the intricate framework of language that the very pillars of cultural heritage, from the wisdom of proverbs and the evocative melodies of songs to the timeless narratives of stories and the profound significance of rituals, are firmly embedded. This linguistic embedding ensures not only the enduring continuity of cultural identity, but also enriches its vibrancy, allowing each succeeding generation to access and interpret the profound legacy of their ancestors, guaranteeing that the spirit and wisdom of a people remain vibrant and alive. The mirror of identity, language and the self. Language serves as the profound mirror of identity, reflecting not only who we are but actively shaping the very essence of our being. From the nuanced vocabulary that allows us to articulate complex emotions to the grammatical structures that dictate our thought patterns. Our native tongue provides the very framework for cognition and how we interpret the world. Beyond the mind, language acts as a powerful social marker, with accents, dialects, and unique expressions signaling our cultural heritage, geographic origins, and sense of belonging within specific communities. Conversely, our evolving self also influences our linguistic choices, as we curate a personal lexicon and speaking style that truly represents our individuality. Thus, language is not merely a tool for communication. It is an intrinsic part of the self, constantly reflecting, constructing, and giving voice to the multifaceted individual we are. Beyond its role in grand societal structures, language is deeply personal, shaping and reflecting both individual and collective identity. Individual identity, language is fundamental to our sense of self. Our inner monologue, the way we formulate thoughts, and how we express emotions are all mediated by language. It allows us to articulate our unique perspectives, desires, and experiences, distinguishing us as individuals. The specific words we choose, our accent, and our style of speech contribute to how others perceive us and how we perceive ourselves. Group and cultural identity. A shared language is one of the strongest bonds that unite a group of people. It facilitates a common understanding of the world, shared. Assertion and belonging. For minority groups or diasporic communities, retaining and using their ancestral language can be a powerful act of identity assertion and cultural resistance against assimilation. It reinforces ties to heritage and community, fostering a sense of solidarity and pride. Thus, language is life, the alpha and the omega of human civilizations and their interactions. Consequently, it is crucial to bear in mind that all colonialists waged wars of elimination on language, culture, and history of the land. They colonized more explicitly the settler colonizers who moved with premise of wipe out the indigenous languages, and come to their wish and dream defined, and concluded as the people without history. The 1993 Literate Nobel Prize-winning novel, Toni Morris' Beloved, prophetically stated definitions belong to the definers, not the defined. Have the answers to the absolute denier and innate pathological liars like the Abyssinia semi-illiterate intellectuals, who can pick up a pen and writing nothing but lies, ballads, legends, fictions by plagiarizing old Northwest Asian folklore from vacuum at face valve as history, without knowing the dictionary meaning of what history indeed mean without a slightest shame and empty mind. But one can learn at least one thing from empty minds, as laureate Toni Morris prophetically stated. When the settlers say to the people they invaded, bastardized, occupied, colonized, committed genocides and ethnocides, and settled the people without history, what they indeed mean is that they, the definers, the settlers, Neftegna's, 𝗟𝗵𝗂𝗂𝗏, also called 𝗔𝗺𝗵𝗵𝗏, alien, bitter enemy, in folks' mouth who carried Europeans, etc., provided guns, the offspring of diver invaders have no history. In other, they are telling us whom they are not the ancient and the great nations of Africa, the Oromos, the Sidamas, and all non-𝗟𝗵𝗂𝗂𝗏. Autochthonous people of the Horn of Africa that later on categorized as Cushitic, Nilotic, and Omotic linguistic families, incarcerated in one of the most backward and barbaric and predatory settler-colonial 𝗟𝗵𝗂 and Amharic-speaking empire, the Ethnociderians. As genuine scholars unanimously argue that no greater injustice can be committed against a people than to deprive them of their own language. And that has been the case of the 𝗟𝗵𝗂 Creole languages since their feet held the African continent from southwestern Arabian desert, today's Yemen. The 𝗟𝗵𝗂s, the prime foe in the Horn of Africa. Since their arrival at the Horn of Africa from today's Yemen, the settler 𝗟𝗵𝗂s intermixed, bastardizes the indigenous Africa population, and target to erase their language and history throughout by committing ethnocides. They waged cataclysmic wars to wipe out the indigenous languages, cultures they encountered in the Horn of Africa from north toward the south. The Horn of Africa is the home of what was later on categorized as the Cushitic linguistic families, the largest families among African languages spoken in the Northeast Africa, Nilotic and Omotic language families. Once the warlords and outlaw village chieftains catapulted up to the power of control, they began committing cultural genocides on the people of northeastern Africas within whom they settled and found home, such as in the Aga or Aju land, Bija land, Sao land, etc., and gradually moved southwards. The language was called 𝗔𝗺𝗵𝗿𝗂, is pidgin language. It was thought to be spoken between 400 and 900 AD in 𝗟RH𝗴𝗂𝗴𝗂 to Tigrinya, Tigray, and the last child called Amharic too. A pidgin language evolved from within conglomerate of militias, soldiers' garrison. They are all linguistically classified to the family of Semitics. It is from here their binary mannerism of 𝗟𝗵𝗂s departs by self-designation being in Africa physically, but the rest most important one a pidgin cultural mindset imported and adopted Northeast Asia folklore, and profited from false claims and self-denial. The found sponsors, mentors, firearm and ammunition, providers without limits and political protectorates via seas and oceans. See 𝗟𝗏𝗡𝗃 and Semitic, a misnomer. It is very important to bear in mind that the term 𝗟𝗏𝗡𝗃 and Semitic that has been deeply entrenched in the science from fictitious and nonsense theological origin of Noah's 3 male offsprings, a papyrus work. But Mother Nature and biology is not so much stupid. There is no signs of shred of evidence of his exist as a human first. Even if we assume he existed, the discrepancy of the 3 siblings' propagated wishes and whims has been works of papyrus or goat skins, spin scribes and caricaturists add nothing more to extol that consequently lead to confusions rather than enlightenment throughout. Although some important challenges has made, yet that did not hold a grain of truth in its evolution linguistic nomming. Sadly, the linguistic scientific community has no a solution yet, and did not find a proper scientific linguistic names of classification that purify it from the mythical debris. Both terms has been used not merely for linguistic communicative purposes, but to reinforce divisions, discrimination even cursed one of the son, Ham, and his oldest son Cush, grandson of Noah. The term Semitics has been used not merely as communication tool, but carries deep political connotations, a weapon of dived and rule ethnocentrism, the schizophrenic superiority from vacuum and committing ethnocides throughout history, with its expansion and colonization enterprise especial in African continent at least since 7th century AD. Ethiopia is not state, but a license of 𝗟𝗵𝗂 warlords. As a rule of thumb, if one departs from what meant history, then there no sate by the name of Ethiopia of Greek root, even more erratic, anomalous Amharic-speaking settler 𝗟𝗵𝗂, who has been the prime enemy to be considered and recognized as Ethiopians. Briefly, Ethiopia of the Greeks was an imaginary demarcation on paper, simple called the land to the south of her colonial boundaries, once they settled in KMT, renamed to Egypt, to the south of Memphis, the capital city located south to today's Cairo on the Nile's west bank. They called the northwest part of Africa juxtaposition their colony 𝗟𝗏𝗴𝗂𝗴𝗃, Libya. Second, the is no nation or state called by Ethiopia late alone to speak Amharic language that was not yet born. According to master teacher Dr. 𝗟𝗵𝗂𝗴𝗂 and Anissa, Kasasum, the author of Sacred Knowledge Traditions of the Oromo people of the Horn of Africa. The people of the continent name their land with their hereditary lineage, and known as Libyan what the Greeks called 𝗟𝗴𝗡𝗂𝗏 before it was renamed to Africa. It is not like America named after individuals that originated from Italian navigator, explorer, Amerigo Vespucci, and the German cartographer Martin Waldseemüller Latinized Vespucius, first name Americus, that easily became a feminine form America. Thus the name Africa, Egypt, or Ethiopia have given by the colonizers, and injected in the mind of colonial school graduates and strange, unknown and meaningless for the mass of the population of the continent, we must aware of it seriously. I have no doubt that is the fact, and at the same time it turn into a piece of bone stuck in the throat to the miseducated individuals as a whole, and most importantly for 𝗟𝗵𝗂𝗏, and assimilate 𝗟𝗵𝗂𝗏𝗂𝗏s who operate under the mask of one Ethiopia. These are the offspring of the Neftegna, gun carriers, reproduced in Oromia or elsewhere, settled within, and yet seal lies, fairy tales, myths and imported legends that one can pack them all in one and throw it in garbage without regrets and hesitation. One loses nothing but headache, migraine, stomachache, etc., and free space in our conscious mind. The cultural battleground. The settler pidgin-Amharic language, whose goal is to erase Oromuummaa, is a continuation of committing cultural genocide reattempted to supplant by itself, by erasing from the mind and the memory of the Oromo people and they targeted, and to produce a perfect assimilate to the extent it can. The assertion that the Amharic language, particularly within the context of the Neftegna settler-colonial project, functioned as a weapon of ethnocide is a powerful and deeply felt charge. This aggressive linguistic imposition, often backed by military and administrative might, was not about fostering genuine bilingualism or linguistic diversity, but rather about enforced assimilation and the destruction of distinct cultural identities. For the Oromo people, a language is not merely a tool for communication. It is the very bedrock of their distinct culture, Gada historical traditional oral teaching and communal spirit, philosophy, mythology, culture of their civilization for time immemorial. It is life, land being an Oromo. Therefore, an attack on a 𝗏𝗏, if not the second lingua franca of African language, is an existential threat of life. Thus anyone who ever he or she is, to what extents ardent Oromophobic, is must think quadruple times before stepping to any perceived attempt to sideline or eradicate a 𝗏𝗏. This systematic erosion of a language, especially when targeting its use within the foundational realm of schooling, subject to from the educational system, is interpreted and labeled as an act of ethnocides or cultural linguistic genocide. Thus depriving a community of its language is tantamount to destroying its very essence of life, its unique way of understanding and interacting with the world. Far from being a neutral medium of communication, Creole Amharic was systematically enforced as the sole official and educational assimilation language, leading to the marginalization, suppression, and eventual erosion of 𝗏𝗏. 100 native languages, African languages, across regions subjected to imperial expansion. Ethiopia's Prosperity Party and the project of cultural genocide. It is crucial to understand settler colonialism and genocides are two faces of the same coin, and the neo-Neftegnans, the illegitimate ruling Prosperity Party, PP, gangs specifically, a figure named Brahanu Nega and Abiy Ahmed's clan orchestrating a systematic ethnocidal war against the Oromo language in schools across Oromia. That is a continuation of the Neftegna system rule of series of warlords, half a devil and half 𝗟𝗵𝗂𝗏, or Abyssinian at least, since the mid-19th century, the era of Kassa, Tewodros, a son of Khasso vendor pursuing a hyper-Oromophobic practice to the very date. These grave crime also paint a picture of an assimilation agenda, purportedly driven by deep-seated insecurities and a super-inferiority complex. Of fear injected in their mind throughout tier history, in encountering Oromo they knew for at least over 400 years, before the firearms and ammunition began to rain like monsoon on them from Europe in the 19th century. As a result, they were able to come out from the mountains and 𝗖𝗏𝗏 valleys, where they were hidden for centuries to invade, conquer, colonize and settle in the south for the first time, and control the power of control in Finfini in their hands to the very date. At the heart of the outcry lies the accusation that the Prosperity Party, often described by its detractors, one-man rule as centralized and fascist regime who dreams to create a new species, their own wished clones similar to Nazi Reich they called Aryans, the Neftegna called it Medemmer. The logic is literally the same. These delusional brain is attempting to erode the foundations of Oromo identity, to wipe out if they can or drive for forced assimilation that is not merely cultural, but is underpinned by a profound aversion to Oromo distinctiveness, manifesting as hyper-Oromophobia. To wipe out Oromia from map if they can. While his specific portfolio or official title related to education is often cited with varying precision by those making the claims, 𝗔𝗺𝗵𝗵𝗿 unqualified to be education minister by any standard, but assigned himself for one objective to wipe out Oromos and Oromia, the very reason he entered politics, a fascistic and sadistic dreams. Born in Oromia analog to 𝗖𝗵𝗲 and assimilated or Amharic hybrid, turned to the worst beast than any Habsha warlords know in history, next to 𝗬𝗏𝗏 and Menelik. They both purportedly leading efforts to strategically diminish or entirely remove the Oromo language, Afaan Oromo, from the curriculum within Oromia's schools. Such actions extend beyond mere policy adjustments. They point to alleged changes in curriculum design, resource allocation, teacher training, and even the emphasis placed on other languages within Oromia's educational institutions as evidence of a deliberate campaign. These measures would not only undermine the use and proficiency of Afaan Oromo among younger generations, but also, critically, sever their connection to their cultural heritage, history, and collective identity, which is intrinsically linked to their language. This alleged fear or disdain for Oromo identity leads to policies designed to dilute or suppress its public expression, particularly through the crucial medium of education. The focus intensifies on 𝗵𝗏𝗃𝗃, a key architect of systemic war. The predatory settler-colonial Abyssinian Empire, often lauded as a mosaic of over 80 distinct ethnic groups, languages, and cultures, stands today at a critical juncture, more precisely, an open-air prison house. While the ruling Prosperity Party, PP, under Abiy Ahmed, personal dictator, a war criminal whose right place must have been in the ICC, right in 2018 at most 2020. But this world is not this world. He and his cohesive fanatic and ardent Oromophic individuals camouflaged with the fake delusional vision of national unity, where there no one come out with childish version of Medemmer delusion of self-cloning, Prosperity Party, etc. Its policies are subtly, yet systematically, leading to a form of cultural genocide by revering the resurgence of Amhara linguistic and cultural dominance reminiscent of the historical Abyssinian Empire. The policy is pursued by individuals they characterize as self-deniers, implying a disconnect or betrayal rooted in an inability to reconcile with or embrace their own heritage, further complicating the psychological portrait painted by the super-inferiority complex, charge. It underscored deep-seated ethnic and political tensions in contemporary fake Ethiopia empire. The Prosperity Party and specific individuals like 𝗵𝗏𝗃𝗃 highlight a profound concern among many Oromos regarding the preservation of their language and identity in what they perceive as an increasingly hostile political environment. The outcome of linguocultural battlefield is predetermined right from its beginning as xenophobic. Narcissist opportunists who suffer from super-ego inferiority, complex self-deniers who wish to be what they are not in real, whose right place must have been in psychotherapy or behind bars, has already dead from within the truth triumph of Afaan Oromo, and all about 100 oldest language triumphs, no matter what it costs. Because that is immutably law of human and humanity, not the work of scribes' wish of delusion called policies on pieces of paper. One must know right from the beginning. The legacy of domination, Abyssinian Empire and Amhara hegemony. For centuries, the entity known as the Abyssinian Empire, largely shaped by Amhara and Tigrayan highlanders, expanded its dominion over diverse peoples. This expansion, particularly pronounced under Emperor Menelik II in the late 19th century, during where alien gun carriers called the Saul Maria's Neftegna Safari scattered garrisons called Kedema, means settled ghettos of the empire. Many non-Amhara groups experienced forced assimilation, land dispossession, and suppression of their unique identities. While the post-1991 era under the Ethiopian peoples, Revolutionary Democratic Front, EPRDF, led largely by the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, introduced an ethnic federalist system aimed at decentralizing power and recognizing the rights of nations, nationalities, and peoples. Critics argue it also entrenched ethnic divisions and often failed to genuinely address historical grievances. The prosperity parties, unity, and the erosion of diversity. Upon ascending to power in 2018, Abiy Ahmed consolidated the EPRDF's constituent parties into the Prosperity Party. A return to a centralized, homogenizing state with a strong Amhara cultural genocide, in this context, do not necessarily imply physical extermination, but rather a deliberate and systematic effort to dismantle, diminish, or erase the distinct cultural markers of non-Amhara communities. Key policy areas and trends include language policy. While the Constitution recognizes all Ethiopian languages, Amharic increasingly serves as the de facto sole working language of the federal government, with limited efforts to promote other major languages at the national level. Critics point to the declining emphasis on native language education in some regions and the pressure on non-Amhara speakers to adopt Amharic for upward mobility. Historical revisionism. The Prosperity Party's narrative often seeks to downplay or reframe the historical injustices suffered by subjugated groups during the imperial era. This revisionism, particularly in educational curricula and national media, is seen as an attempt to erase the collective memory of historical oppression and build a national identity around a singular, often Amhara-centric, historical narrative. Centralization of power. The PP's push for a stronger federal center and a weakening of regional autonomy is viewed by many as a direct threat to the self-determination and cultural preservation rights enshrined in the ethnic federalist constitution. Decisions made at the federal level, critics argue, increasingly impinge on regional cultural policies and resource allocation, favoring a top-down approach. Demographic engineering and land disputes. In contentious regions, particularly those bordering Amhara-speaking areas, there are allegations of policies that encourage or facilitate Amhara settlement, leading to demographic shifts and heightened land disputes. This is seen by some as a strategy to alter the ethnic composition of areas historically inhabited by other groups, further marginalizing indigenous populations. Suppression of dissent and ethnic identity. Prosperity Party targets take strong measures against political dissent, particularly in Oromia and the Oromo people, and that is an open secret the empire cannot exist otherwise since she was invented. And that is why all warlords, juntas, and rebels butcher each other to control Finfini, the heart of Oromo land/𝗖𝗿𝗄𝗏. Not in Gondar or Aksum, and that is all about the settler-colonial mindset, and the works of settler who leaves no stone unturned, which we must know more than they know themselves from their toes to their hair. The voices of resistance and the stakes. The entire No Amhara, people within the empire, the Oromos as prime and others alike, have been at the forefront of raising these concerns. They argue that true national unity cannot be forged by erasing diversity, but by genuinely embracing and protecting it. Cultural activists, community leaders, and political opposition figures are engaging in various forms of resistance. Cultural preservation efforts, promoting local languages through literature, music, and media. Advocacy and awareness, raising national and international awareness about the alleged cultural erosion. Political mobilization, demanding respect for constitutional rights, including self-administration and language rights. The fight against what is perceived as cultural genocide under the Prosperity Party is more than just a political struggle. It is a battle for identity, heritage, and the very soul of the mass of the population within the empire. Failure to address these deep-seated grievances risks further deepening ethnic divisions, fueling instability, and potentially fracturing a nation already grappling with multiple internal conflicts. The path to genuine prosperity, many contend, must lie in celebrating its mosaic of cultures, not in subsuming them under a singular, dominant narrative. This aggressive linguistic imposition, often backed by military and administrative might, was not about fostering genuine bilingualism or linguistic diversity, but rather about enforced assimilation and the destruction of distinct cultural identities. For many, about 100 oldest indigenous languages and people incarcerated within fake Ethiopia, the Neftegna language Amharic recalled the profound trauma inflicted upon communities whose languages, oral traditions, and unique worldviews were systematically undermined, effectively contributing to the ethnocide under the guise of national unity or progress, where neither of them proves a shred of truth for the downtrodden masses that carry the burden of the empire on their shoulders for more centuries. The constitutional criminalization of language. While a direct constitutional clause explicitly criminalizing the speaking of other languages might be difficult to pinpoint in the strict legal sense, the de facto and institutionalized suppression amounted to precisely that. Through policy, legislation, and enforced practice, the use of indigenous languages. Forbidden in education, all schooling from primary to higher education was conducted exclusively in Amharic. Children from non-Amharic speaking communities were forced to abandon their mother tongues upon entering school, often facing punishment for speaking their native languages within school grounds. This directly severed generations from their linguistic heritage, hindering their ability to engage with their own cultures academically. Excluded from administration and justice, government services, legal proceedings, public announcements, and official communication were solely in Amharic. This effectively created a barrier to participation for the vast majority of the population who did not speak Amharic, rendering them second-class citizens in their own land. Access to justice, land rights, and basic public services became contingent on linguistic assimilation. Suppressed in media and public life, radio, newspapers, and other forms of public communication were overwhelmingly Amharic. The promotion or publication of materials in other indigenous languages was heavily discouraged or outright banned, stifling cultural expression and intellectual development in these tongues. Implicitly criminalized by policy, while not perhaps a penal code offense, the consistent institutional exclusion, the lack of recognition, and the active discouragement of other languages created an environment where their use was seen as unpatriotic, backward, or even subversive. It fostered a sense of shame and inferiority among non-Amharic speakers, pushing languages towards endangerment and extinction within a few generations. Committing ethnocides through linguicide, this systematic assault on linguistic diversity was not merely an administrative oversight. It was a foundational component of a broader nation-building project that aimed for ethnic and cultural homogenization under an Amhara-centric identity. Such policies directly contribute to ethnocide, the deliberate and systematic destruction of a people's culture, including their language, identity, and traditions, without necessarily involving the physical extermination of the group, which would be genocide. The devastating consequences of lingual battle. Cultural erosion. Language is the primary vehicle for culture. When a language is suppressed, the oral histories, traditional songs, proverbs, knowledge systems, and unique worldviews embedded within it begin to disappear. Loss of identity. Forcing individuals to abandon their mother tongue often leads to an identity crisis, creating a disconnect between generations and alienating people from their heritage. Educational disadvantage. Children learning in a foreign language are inherently at a disadvantage, impacting their cognitive development and academic success. Economic marginalization. Non-Amharic speakers were often relegated to the peripheries of the economy and political power, further entrenching inequalities. Intergenerational trauma. The shame and struggle associated with language loss have left lasting psychological scars on communities. The narrative of 𝗟𝗴𝗂𝗂𝗧𝗔𝗵𝗵𝗿𝗀 Ethiopia is one of stark contrasts. His pursuit of national unity tragically paved the way for the insidious erosion of countless indigenous African languages and the cultures intertwined with them. This legacy of linguistic imperialism, whether deemed cursed or simply a profound historical mistake, underscores the critical importance of recognizing and celebrating linguistic diversity as an inalienable human right and a cornerstone of true national strength. For many, the shadow of ethnocide by policy remains a painful, unaddressed wound in the heart of the fake Ethiopia's history. Conclusion. A central aspiration attributed to Abiy Ahmed and his alleged mentor, 𝗏𝗏 appears to be the restoration of a bygone era. Specifically, the 19th and early 20th century Abyssinia embodied by figures like the warlord Menelik II and Tefri Mekkonen, later 𝗟𝗴𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗏. This vision reportedly seeks to resurrect the imperial grandeur and centralizing power structures of that period into the vastly different landscape of 21st century Ethiopia empire. However, for a nation of 130 million diverse people, such a nostalgic pursuit is increasingly viewed by critics not as a path forward, but as a dangerous and anachronistic, dead end. Instead of fostering unity and progress based on contemporary realities, the attempt to impose a historical template on a complex, multi-ethnic society, characterized by its own distinct modern challenges and aspirations, risks transforming what could be a vibrant state into what many perceive as a prison house, stifling its potential and trapping its populace in cycles of conflict and repression rooted in a profoundly outdated imperial paradigm. It is the duty of the elites of Neftegna settlers, who claim to be civilized and exceptional, must acknowledge the harsh reality of their situation. Despite their grandiose claims, the majority of the population they prey upon cannot even provide their children with 3 meals a day or access to clean water. These elites are blinded by their own myths and empty dreams, failing to see the true state of their people. The masses who are left behind to survive on ox-drawn plowings, add the mass that depends on them, are the ones who truly suffer. They are the ones who are neglected and forgotten by the elites who claim to represent them. This inequality cannot continue, as it will only lead to more suffering and resentment among the people. It is crucial for the elites to recognize the truth on the ground before it is too late. They must understand that their empty promises and false sense of superiority will not protect them from the wrath of the people. 6 years ago, we saw how the formidable power of the masses can overthrow those who have abused their positions. If the elites do not change their ways, they will be ousted and hunted as wild beasts by the very people they have exploited. It is time for them to face the reality of their situation and work towards a more just and equal society for all. Only then can they truly claim to be civilized and exceptional. Language serves as the profound mirror of identity, reflecting not only who we are but actively shaping the very essence of our being. From the nuanced vocabulary that allows us to articulate complex emotions to the grammatical structures that dictate our thought patterns, our native tongue provides the very framework for cognition and how we interpret the world. Beyond the mind, language acts as a powerful social marker, with accents, dialects, and unique expressions signaling our cultural heritage, geographic origins, and sense of belonging within specific communities. Conversely, our evolving self also influences our linguistic choices, as we curate a personal lexicon and speaking style that truly represents our individuality. Thus, language is not merely a tool for communication. It is an intrinsic part of the self, constantly reflecting, constructing, and giving voice to the multifaceted individual we are. Empires live with the conscience of the conscious of its death, and one of the poorest, the most backward and dependent predatory settler-colonial Abyssinian empire shall not be otherwise. To the wonderful people who take time out of their busy days to listen my thoughts, thank you. Share, comment, even spark a debate.